The little girl sat alone on the concrete steps outside the gleaming corporate tower, shoulders hunched against an invisible weight her expensive dress couldn't hide. Her tiny hands trembled as she clutched a stuffed rabbit, missing one eye. Security guards walked past with barely a glance. Executives hurried by, attention locked on smartphone screens. Marcus Kane stopped. At 44, the lines around his eyes told stories his lips rarely shared. His weathered face surveyed the scene with automatic precision, posture shifting into that subtle defensive stance, old habits from his special forces days that had never quite faded. The worn maintenance uniform with his name stitched above the pocket contrasted sharply with the polished marble entrance of TechCore Industries. He knelt slowly before the child, movement deliberate and non-threatening. The brown paper lunch bag in his calloused hand crinkled as he opened it. The instinct had fired before conscious thought. Child alone equals danger. Defensive posture equals trauma. Red-rimmed eyes equals recent tears. Combat training didn't fade just because the uniform came off. And something about the way this girl hunched into herself reminded him too much of Tyler after bad nights when the asthma stole his breath and left him shaking. His voice came out gentle, carrying the gravelly texture of a man who'd shouted orders through sandstorms. The girl looked up, startled, her red-rimmed eyes meeting his. She didn't speak, just stared with the weariness of someone far older than her 7 years. Marcus nodded as if they'd had an entire conversation. He pulled out a sandwich, neatly wrapped in wax paper, and tore it in half. Turkey and Swiss. Not fancy, but his boy said it was the best in 3 counties. He held out the larger portion. Her small hand reached out hesitantly and took the sandwich half. Behind them, the distinctive click of high heels on concrete paused. Marcus's ears, trained to detect the subtlest sounds in hostile territory, registered the presence, but he kept his focus on the child. The girl's whispered reply came soft. Lily. He settled beside her on the step, leaving careful space between them. As the girl took a small bite, Marcus felt eyes boring into his back, calculating, assessing. He recognized the weight of that stare from countless missions. Someone was watching, evaluating, making decisions that would change everything. Neither Marcus nor Lily noticed the sleek black car with tinted windows across the street, or the man inside taking photographs of their exchange. The lens captured every angle: the maintenance worker sharing his lunch, the CEO's daughter accepting food from a stranger, the moment that would later be analyzed frame by frame in a corner office 50 floors above. Marcus's day had begun like every other at 4:30 in the morning with the soft beep of his watch alarm. He silenced it before the second chirp, a habit formed in terrain where sound meant death. His small apartment remained dark as he moved silently to his son's room, placing a gentle hand on Tyler's forehead. The boy's breathing came steady tonight. No wheezing. Marcus allowed himself a moment of relief before beginning his morning ritual. Coffee. Medications for Tyler arranged by the breakfast plate. Lunch packed, 1 sandwich, 1 apple, 1 protein bar. Bills sorted into 3 piles: paid, must pay, and impossible. The last pile grew taller each month, dominated by medical statements with red stamps declaring past due. Marcus stared at his son's inhaler prescription refill needed, $175 without insurance. His jaw tightened as he tucked his last 20 into Tyler's lunch money envelope. Tyler appeared in his doorway, hair tousled from sleep, looking smaller than his 7 years in oversized pajamas. Marcus's expression immediately softened at the sight of his son shuffling to the table and climbing onto his chair. Tyler pointed to the paper bag containing only an apple and protein bar. Marcus ruffled his son's hair, the rare smile transforming his stern features. The lie came easily, cushioned by necessity. Mrs. Henderson next door had made too much casserole yesterday and was sending him with leftovers. Tyler didn't need to know that Mrs. Henderson had been gone all week visiting her sister, or that Marcus would work through lunch again. What mattered was the medicine, the rent, and keeping his boy's world intact after Melissa's death 3 years ago. Marcus straightened to his full height, giving a playful salute that Tyler returned with giggling seriousness. As Tyler dressed for school, Marcus allowed himself one moment of weakness. Leaning against the kitchen counter, eyes closed, shoulders momentarily slumped, the photograph on the refrigerator caught his attention. Himself in desert camouflage, arms slung around another soldier. David Hayes grinned back at the camera, both men younger, less burdened. Marcus touched the image briefly, the familiar ache in his chest flaring. 5 years hadn't dulled it. 5 years of carrying the weight of those final moments in Khorasan province. The chaos and gunfire, David's last order crackling through the radio static. Get to the extraction point. That's an order, Kane. And Marcus had obeyed, retreating with the wounded while David stayed behind to secure the objective. The mission report called it a tactical success. Marcus called it abandonment. The words came out as a whisper, a promise renewed each morning to a ghost who couldn't hear. No matter what it took, he'd protect what David left behind, even if he didn't yet know what that meant. The maintenance corridors of TechCore Industries formed a labyrinth of pipes, electrical panels, and service elevators that Marcus navigated with practiced efficiency. His tool belt clinked softly against his hip as he moved through the building's skeleton, invisible to the corporate world that pulsed on the other side of the walls. It was a different kind of reconnaissance, less deadly, but requiring the same attention to detail. Marcus checked his watch. 10:45. He'd skipped the employee break room, avoiding the pitying glances when others noticed his empty lunch table spot again. The encounter with the little girl on the steps had delayed his maintenance schedule, but he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Something in her eyes reminded him too much of Tyler after the funeral, lost and confused, trying to be brave when the world made no sense. His radio crackled. Miller, no, Kane, we need you on the 32nd floor, executive bathroom leak. The correction came automatic. 5 years out and people still mixed up his name with the hundreds of other maintenance workers cycling through these halls. The 32nd floor was another world entirely. All glass and chrome and hushed conversations. Assistants with perfect hair moved between offices carrying tablets instead of tools. Marcus kept his eyes forward, ignoring the curious glances at his uniform as he followed the discreet signs to the executive restroom. He knelt beside the sink cabinet, wrench in hand, when the bathroom door swung open. The woman's voice cut through the space, crisp and authoritative, the kind accustomed to being obeyed. Marcus remained focused on his work, invisible as always to the executives. Another voice, male and measured, attempted reason. The quarterly numbers, the new system causing delays across all departments. The woman cut him off sharply. After the breach last month, they couldn't afford another vulnerability. Marcus's hands stilled momentarily. Security breach. The company rumor mill had mentioned nothing about this. The leak had been contained, the man assured her. No one outside the executive team knew. Their voices moved toward the mirror. Marcus caught their reflections without looking up. The woman elegant in a tailored suit, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun, the man older with silver temples and a perpetual frown. The discussion ended with finality. She expected his compliance report by end of day. As they turned to leave, the woman's eyes flickered to Marcus for the first time. He kept his focus on the pipes, playing his role perfectly. Just another maintenance worker, invisible and unhearing. The bathroom door closed behind them. Marcus waited 30 seconds before sitting back on his heels, processing what he'd overheard. Security breach, contained leak, additional measures. The information slotted into his mind like pieces of mission intelligence filing themselves away for future reference. His radio buzzed again, different tone this time. Urgent. Miller, Kane, report to Human Resources immediately. Marcus's stomach tightened. Had they realized he'd overheard? Copy that. Finishing up here first. The response came sharp. Negative. Now Kane. Executive order. The Human Resources office felt as sterile and impersonal as a military briefing room. Marcus sat stiffly in the visitor's chair, his tool belt and uniform out of place among the motivational posters and ergonomic furniture. The HR director, a woman with a practiced smile and cold eyes, placed a folder on the desk between them. She stood without answering his question about whether there was a problem with his work. On the contrary, she assured him, Miss Hayes had specifically requested him. Marcus's pulse quickened slightly. Hayes. The name hit like shrapnel even after 5 years. Surely a coincidence. Hayes was a common name after all. The elevator ride to the uppermost floor occurred in silence. Marcus cataloged escape routes and security cameras out of habit, noting the increased presence of guards as they approached the CEO suite. The mahogany double doors opened to reveal a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The woman from the bathroom stood with her back to him, staring out at the skyline. The HR director slipped away, closing the door softly. The woman spoke without turning, reciting his service record with perfect accuracy. Former Staff Sergeant, 5th Special Forces Group, expert in tactical operations and communications. Honorably discharged 5 years ago following the Khorasan province incident. Marcus stood at parade rest, his face passive despite the jolt that ran through him at the mention of Khorasan. The woman turned slowly, approaching her desk with controlled precision. She studied him for a long moment before revealing her identity. Victoria Hayes, though her legal name was Victoria Morgan Hayes, widow to the man whose photograph still hung on Marcus's refrigerator. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus's mind raced through implications and possibilities. The same photograph that marked his daily guilt sat on her desk now, staring back at him with David's eternal grin. Her voice came tight when she corrected his assumption. Not wife, widow. 5 years now, thanks to Khorasan. The air grew heavy with unspoken accusations. Marcus maintained his composure through decades of discipline, though his heart hammered against his ribs. He hadn't known David had a child, he said finally, keeping his voice neutral. Victoria's expression hardened. Lily had been 2 when her father died, too young to remember him, old enough to feel his absence every day. Marcus absorbed the information like a physical blow, each word landing with precision. David Hayes, the brother-in-arms he'd failed to bring home, had left behind a daughter who would never know her father's voice or feel his embrace. The weight of that failure pressed down with renewed force. Victoria's tone shifted, became skeptical. She asked why he'd given half his lunch to her daughter today. The abrupt change of subject caught him off guard. He gave the simple truth. The girl had looked like she needed it more than he did. Victoria studied him, searching for deception. Finding none, she explained. Lily had run away from her caretaker that morning, had been doing it more frequently lately. The security team had missed her, so had her nanny, but Marcus hadn't. He noticed things, Marcus said simply. Old habit. Victoria pressed a button on her desk. A moment later, the door opened and Lily entered, clutching her one-eyed rabbit. She stopped short when she saw Marcus, her eyes widening with recognition. The little girl rushed forward, stopping just before Marcus, suddenly shy but vibrating with eagerness. Victoria spoke gently, introducing him as someone who had worked with Lily's father. The transformation in the child's expression came instantly. She wanted to know everything. Had her daddy been brave? Had he been kind? What had he been like? Marcus knelt to her level the way he always did with Tyler. The words felt inadequate for the bond forged in gunfire and blood, but they were true enough. David had been the bravest man Marcus ever knew, had saved his life more than once. Lily's small face lit up with each confirmation, soaking in details about a father she'd never remember. Victoria watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. After a moment, she spoke to her daughter about a piano lesson waiting. Lily looked disappointed but nodded, asking if Marcus would be there again. Before he could answer, Victoria interjected. Kane worked here. They'd talk more about this later. When the door closed behind Lily, the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Victoria's professional mask slipped, revealing raw emotion beneath. She snapped that he shouldn't have told the girl those things. Marcus straightened to his full height, confused about which part she meant. Any of it, Victoria clarified. Did he have any idea how difficult it had been raising a child who constantly asked about a father she never really knew? Every new detail became an obsession. Marcus remained silent, sensing the grief beneath her anger. Victoria composed herself with visible effort, returning to her desk and resuming her CEO persona. She had a proposition for him, she announced, one that would benefit them both. She'd reviewed his employment file, she continued. 3 years with building maintenance despite being significantly overqualified. Performance evaluations were excellent, but he'd turned down 2 promotions. A man with his skills could earn far more elsewhere. Marcus gave the simple explanation. He needed the flexibility for his son, who had severe asthma. The schedule worked for doctor appointments. Victoria nodded, demonstrating knowledge she shouldn't have possessed. Tyler, age 7, his wife Melissa had died in a car accident 3 years ago. She noted his surprise at her thoroughness. Research, she explained. Due diligence. The proposition came direct. She needed someone she could trust. Someone with his particular skill set who understood both security protocols and people. Tech core industries face challenges, internal and external. She needed someone who could assess their internal culture, security protocols, and potential vulnerabilities. Marcus pointed out the obvious. He was a maintenance technician, not corporate security. Victoria's tone sharpened. She told him not to insult her intelligence. He'd been special forces. His technical aptitude scores were off the charts. He was observant, resourceful, and clearly capable of discretion. Most importantly, he'd known David. The last three words landed like precise strikes. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Victoria slid a folder across the desk. The position was Special Advisor for Operational Integrity, working directly with her. The salary was triple his current pay, with full medical benefits for both him and Tyler. Marcus didn't reach for the folder immediately. He asked the question that mattered. Why him? She had a building full of executives and security professionals. Victoria's expression darkened. Because someone inside this company was trying to steal technology that could change the world. Technology David had helped develop, and she didn't know who she could trust. The pieces began falling into place. Marcus asked if she trusted him because of David. Victoria's voice softened fractionally. She trusted him because he'd stopped for her daughter when no one else did, and because David had trusted him with his life. That kind of judgment meant something. Marcus finally opened the folder. The contract outlined responsibilities that went far beyond consulting: intelligence gathering, personnel assessment, security protocol development. The salary figure made his breath catch. Enough to cover Tyler's medical bills, enough for them to move to a better apartment, maybe even start a college fund. Victoria added one more thing. Lily had become attached to the idea of him already. She needed stability, male influence. Part of this role would involve being present for her occasionally. Company events, certain outings, nothing excessive. Marcus looked up sharply. She wanted him to be some kind of substitute father figure? Victoria corrected him firmly. She wanted him to be a connection to Lily's real father, and to provide the security expertise this company desperately needed. Marcus closed the folder. He'd need time to consider. Victoria's response came swift. He had until tomorrow morning. This opportunity wouldn't come again. As Marcus turned to leave, Victoria added a final condition. No one could know about this arrangement. As far as anyone was concerned, he was a corporate culture consultant who'd impressed her with his people skills. Marcus paused at the door. With all due respect, he didn't lie to his son. Victoria countered smoothly. Then he should consider it classified information, something she imagined he was familiar with. Their eyes locked in silent battle. Finally, Marcus gave a curt nod and left, the weight of the decision already pressing down on him. That night, Marcus's apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in as he sat at the kitchen table. The contract spread before him like a map to a future he couldn't quite envision. Tyler was asleep in the next room, his breathing monitored by the second-hand medical device Marcus had repaired himself. The photograph of David stared up from beside the contract, a ghost from another life. Marcus ran a hand over his face, exhaustion seeping into his bones. His phone vibrated with a text message. Need your decision by 8 a.m. The sender's initials followed. A second message arrived immediately after. Tyler's medical coverage would be retroactive to today. All existing bills covered. Marcus stared at the messages, anger and gratitude warring within him. She was using his son as leverage, and it was working. Every practical consideration pointed toward acceptance. The money would solve immediate problems and create breathing room he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Tyler could have the specialists he needed, the medications without the agonizing calculus of which bills to pay first. But something about the arrangement felt wrong, like accepting blood money for a sin he couldn't atone for. David's widow offering David's betrayer a path to redemption through David's daughter. The symmetry was too perfect, too calculated. Victoria Hayes hadn't chosen him randomly. She'd researched him, tracked him, waited for the right moment to make her offer. The question was why. He moved to Tyler's doorway, watching his son sleep. The boy looked so much like Melissa, it sometimes hurt to look at him. The same determined chin, the same gentle expression, even in sleep. The inhaler sat on the bedside table, nearly empty. The prescription refill form glared from the kitchen counter, a reminder of his failure to provide what his son needed most. Marcus made his decision, not for Victoria's company or David's legacy, but for the child sleeping peacefully in the next room, who deserved better than a father choosing pride over survival. The executive floor was quiet at 7:45 when Marcus arrived wearing the only suit he owned, purchased for Melissa's funeral and rarely worn since. It fit differently now, his frame leaner and harder from years of physical labor. Victoria was already at her desk, immaculate in a charcoal suit, hair pulled back severely. She looked up as he entered, her expression giving nothing away. Marcus placed the signed contract on her desk. He had conditions. Victoria raised an eyebrow, reminding him he was hardly in a position to negotiate. Marcus interrupted. His son came first. If Tyler had an asthma attack or medical emergency, he left. No questions asked, no explanations needed. Victoria studied him for a long moment before nodding. Acceptable. Marcus continued. He needed to know everything about the security breach. All of it. If he was going to help protect this company and Lily, he couldn't work blind. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, perhaps, that he'd included her daughter in his protection mandate. She opened her laptop without argument. James Conrad, her COO, would brief him this morning. As far as Conrad knew, Marcus was a corporate culture consultant she'd brought in to address morale issues. Victoria stood and extended her hand. Welcome to TechCore Industries. As they shook, Marcus caught a glimpse of Lily peering through the glass wall of Victoria's office, her one-eyed rabbit clutched to her chest. The little girl offered a small, secretive wave. Marcus nodded slightly in acknowledgement, already understanding that his commitment extended far beyond a contract. He was re-entering a world of secrets and danger, this time without the protection of a uniform or the clarity of a declared enemy. Victoria followed his gaze and saw her daughter. Her expression softened momentarily. Lily hadn't stopped talking about him since yesterday. The sandwich man who knew her daddy. Before Marcus could respond, the office door opened and a silver-haired man entered. James Conrad's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Marcus in his funeral suit, then at their clasped hands. Victoria released Marcus's hand, her CEO persona sliding seamlessly back into place. She introduced Marcus as their new special advisor for corporate culture and operational integrity, working directly with her on several initiatives. Conrad didn't bother hiding his surprise. A maintenance worker, surely there were more qualified candidates. Victoria interrupted coolly. Kane had a unique skill set that perfectly matched their current needs. He'd be joining the executive briefing starting today. Conrad's smile didn't reach his eyes. How unconventional, he remarked. Welcome aboard. He turned to Victoria, reminding her that the board was waiting in conference room A. As they left, Conrad placed a proprietary hand on Victoria's lower back. She subtly shifted away from his touch, a movement so slight most would miss it. But Marcus caught it, along with the flash of irritation in Conrad's eyes. Interesting, Marcus thought. Very interesting indeed. The morning briefing revealed little beyond corporate politics and quarterly projections, but Marcus observed everything. Conrad commanded the room with practiced ease, but his eyes kept drifting to Marcus with barely concealed hostility. Other executives treated Marcus with polite curiosity or dismissive courtesy, depending on their perception of his value to Victoria. By 11:30, Marcus needed a break from the suffocating conference room atmosphere. He found his way to the executive bathroom, loosening his tie and splashing cold water on his face. The reflection staring back looked like a stranger playing dress-up in borrowed clothes. The door opened behind him. James Conrad entered, pausing fractionally when he saw Marcus before masking his surprise with a practiced smile. Marcus straightened, reaching for a paper towel with deliberate casualness. Conrad moved to the adjacent sink, positioning himself in Marcus's peripheral vision. The words came out smooth, almost friendly. Hiding from the board meeting, Kane? Marcus gave the neutral response about taking a moment to review notes. Conrad chuckled, the sound hollow. Notes, right. He turned, leaning against the counter with calculated casualness. The posture of a man about to deliver a message. Conrad mentioned he'd been doing some note-taking of his own. About Marcus, his military record, or rather, the unredacted portions. Coruscant, for instance. Quite the cluster from what he'd gathered there. The name hung between them like a live grenade, deliberate and devastating. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his expression unchanged despite the sudden roaring in his ears. He asked Conrad if there was a point. The older man stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space in a deliberate power move. Just curious, Conrad explained, why Victoria would hire the man who survived the mission that killed her husband, especially since the details of that mission remain so mysteriously classified. Marcus held his ground, refusing to yield an inch. If Conrad had concerns about his qualifications, he should take them up with the CEO. Conrad's expression shifted, became more calculating. He was more concerned about Marcus's intentions. The newcomer appeared out of nowhere, gained Victoria's trust overnight, secured a position that didn't exist before. Very convenient timing considering their current situation. Marcus asked what situation Conrad meant. Testing. The COO's eyes narrowed. Playing dumb didn't suit him. They both knew what was at stake here. Conrad straightened, adjusting his tie once more. A word of advice, he offered. Whatever game Marcus was playing, he should consider who might get caught in the crossfire. Like that asthmatic son of his. The threat, so casually delivered, sent ice through Marcus's veins. His hand twitched at his side, muscle memory from years of combat seeking a weapon that wasn't there. The words came out quiet, dangerous. Threatening a child told him everything he needed to know about Conrad. Conrad corrected him smoothly. Not a threat, merely an observation about vulnerability. Everyone had them, even Victoria Hayes. He paused at the door, especially Victoria Hayes. The parting shot landed with precision before Conrad disappeared into the hallway. Marcus remained motionless, processing. Conrad knew about Tyler's condition, was actively investigating Marcus's military past, and had just issued what any reasonable person would interpret as a threat. The game had escalated faster than anticipated, and Marcus found himself playing catch-up in enemy territory with unclear rules and uncertain allies. His phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number directing him to Lab C on the 15th floor at 7 p.m. Come alone, the text read. We need to talk about Guardian. The message deleted itself after Marcus read it, leaving no trace beyond the memory of words that changed everything. The technical department occupied the entire 15th floor, a sprawling landscape of workstations, test labs, and collaborative spaces. Marcus spent the afternoon conducting his cover role's employee satisfaction interviews, building his cover while gathering intelligence. By 6:45, most staff had filtered out, leaving the floor eerily quiet. Lab C sat tucked in the northeast corner, a secure testing facility accessible only with specialized clearance. Marcus's new access card granted him entry to the otherwise restricted area. Inside, advanced computing equipment hummed with the sound of processing power. Monitors displayed lines of code and simulation models Marcus recognized as encryption algorithms. A woman sat at a terminal, her back to the door, fingers flying across a specialized keyboard. She spoke without turning around, noting he was 3 minutes early. Military habit, Marcus replied. The woman spun her chair to face him, revealing sharp intelligence in her eyes and skepticism in her expression. She introduced herself as Jennifer Park, lead encryption engineer and one of David Hayes' original team members. Unlike the other staff who'd been either nervous or dismissive of Marcus's questions, she regarded him with open suspicion. These didn't sound like culture questions, she observed. They sounded like security audit questions. Marcus gave his prepared response about company culture, including how safe people felt, both physically and digitally. Jennifer wasn't buying it. His background in building maintenance qualified him for this role. How exactly? Marcus smiled slightly. People talked around the maintenance guy, revealed things they wouldn't to official investigators. Jennifer studied him with the intensity of someone trained to spot deception. She asked what he was really doing there. Victoria Hayes didn't hire people without specific purpose. Marcus decided to take a calculated risk. He asked what she knew about Guardian's security protocols being altered. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly, confirmation that he'd struck a nerve. She glanced around the open workspace, then lowered her voice. Not here, she said. They needed to talk somewhere private. She suggested they meet again at after hours when fewer eyes were watching. Marcus agreed, recognizing the weight of what she wasn't saying. Jennifer's fingers returned to her keyboard, but her shoulders remained tense. As Marcus turned to leave, she called after him. One more thing, she said. Guardian wasn't just another corporate innovation. David had built something that could fundamentally reshape global security architecture. The people who wanted it would stop at nothing to acquire it. The parking garage was deserted at 10:55 p.m., concrete structure echoing with distant sounds of the city. Marcus had arrived 30 minutes early, sweeping the area for surveillance devices and potential ambush points. Old habits from missions that kept him alive when others hadn't been so fortunate. He positioned himself near a concrete pillar, back protected with clear sight lines to all approaches. Jennifer emerged from the stairwell at 11:02, a tablet clutched to her chest, eyes darting nervously around the dimly lit space. Marcus stepped slightly into the light, allowing her to see him without speaking. She hurried over, relief evident in her posture. She handed him the tablet without preamble. Everything was there: security logs, access changes, timestamp discrepancies, plus her analysis of search patterns through David's archived files. Marcus verified the contents quickly, recognizing immediately the value of what she'd compiled. This was exactly what they needed. But Jennifer had found something else, something even she wasn't aware of until she started digging deeper. A hidden subroutine in Guardian's architecture, like a digital dead man switch. If certain parameters were met, the entire system initiated a shutdown sequence and sent alerts to multiple external servers. The code signature matched David's personal style, but it wasn't documented anywhere in the official architecture. Marcus understood immediately. A fail-safe, something David built in case the technology fell into the wrong hands. Jennifer nodded, then revealed more. The subroutine contained encrypted coordinates, physical locations, 5 of them. Marcus concluded the obvious, the fragment locations. David had built a map into the system itself. Jennifer confirmed, but accessing those coordinates required an encryption key she didn't have. Without it, they were just meaningless strings of numbers. Marcus secured the tablet inside his jacket, already planning his next moves. He told Jennifer to go home, using a different route than she'd come, and to delete any copies of this data from her personal devices. Jennifer mentioned she'd already done that. The tablet contained the only copy. As she turned to leave, she offered a final warning. If Conrad was really trying to steal Guardian, he wouldn't stop at corporate espionage. David had believed this technology could change global security paradigms. People had killed for less. Marcus acknowledged the warning with grim understanding. After Jennifer departed, he remained in the garage for several more minutes, processing the new information. The failsafe, the coordinates, the systematic security degradation, all pieces of a puzzle that was beginning to take shape. His phone vibrated, an unknown number. Marcus answered cautiously. The voice on the other end made his blood run cold, gruff, authoritative, carrying the distinctive cadence of military command. A voice he hadn't heard in 5 years but would recognize anywhere. Colonel Richard Mitchell, Marcus's former commanding officer, the man who'd led the Khorasan mission and then disappeared into retirement amid whispers of classified operations gone wrong. Mitchell's appearance now, at this precise moment, couldn't be coincidence. The colonel suggested they talk, face to face. There were things Marcus needed to know about Khorasan, about David, about what he'd walked into at TechCorps. Marcus spotted the black sedan in the northwest corner, exactly where Mitchell said it would be. Against every instinct screaming caution, he approached. The window lowered, revealing Mitchell's stern features, more gray than Marcus remembered, deeper lines around his eyes. But the command presence unchanged. Mitchell told him to get in before someone saw them together. Time was short, and Marcus was in deeper than he realized. Inside the car, Marcus asked the obvious question. What was Mitchell doing here? The colonel's response came measured and direct. Same thing as Marcus, protecting David Hayes' legacy and trying to keep Marcus alive long enough to finish what they'd started in Khorasan. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Marcus had spent 5 years believing Khorasan was a disaster, a failed operation that got good men killed. Mitchell asked if that's what Marcus thought happened, that they'd failed. The alternative Mitchell presented was almost too much to process. What if Khorasan wasn't about the target or the prototype at all? What if the real mission objective had been accomplished precisely as planned? Marcus stared at his former commander, implications racing through his mind. Mitchell pulled out a secure phone displaying the surveillance photos. Conrad meeting with several men in various locations. Former intelligence operatives now working private sector. Known brokers for technological black markets. All connected to a group that would very much like to own global encryption standards for the next decade. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Mitchell explained that he'd been watching tech core industries since David's death, waiting for the opposition to make their move. Conrad wasn't just a corporate thief. He was connected to the same people who'd been waiting in Coruscant, people who'd been after this technology for years. Marcus asked the question that had haunted him for 5 years. What really happened to David? Mitchell's expression grew grave. David didn't die because the mission failed. He died because it succeeded. He'd found something in that compound, something beyond the prototype they were sent to secure, something worth dying to protect. The Guardian fragments, Marcus murmured, understanding crystallizing. Mitchell looked surprised that Marcus knew about them. Knowledge gained just hours ago from Jennifer's hidden subroutine. Mitchell nodded slowly. David had always thought 3 steps ahead, had known the risks when he volunteered for Coruscant. Marcus's old anger resurfaced, raw and bitter. Then why send him at all? Why not extract the prototype another way? Mitchell's answer cut through Marcus's defenses, because David was the only one who could verify what they were really after. The prototype had been bait. They'd known it was compromised. What they needed was confirmation of who was waiting on the other end of that transaction. Marcus processed this, reconstructing that night with new context. The unexpected resistance, the way David had insisted on securing the prototype himself, sending Marcus to escort wounded team members to extraction. The final radio transmission. Get our men out. That's an order, Kane. Words Marcus had interpreted as desperate improvisation were actually the culmination of a carefully orchestrated plan. Mitchell produced a small flash drive, explaining that it contained evidence of Conrad's operations, surveillance on his team, financial transfers to known operatives, communication intercepts, enough to prove Conrad was working for the same network they'd encountered in Coruscant. Tomorrow's board meeting wasn't just about Guardian, Mitchell warned. It was about removing Victoria from power. Conrad had gathered enough board support to force a vote of no confidence. Marcus recognized the pattern immediately. Classic corporate coup: eliminate leadership, create chaos, extract valuable assets during the confusion. Mitchell confirmed Marcus's assessment, then added the critical detail. Marcus needed to secure the remaining fragments first. If Victoria was removed tomorrow, Conrad would have full access to company systems within hours. The question Marcus dreaded asking finally emerged. Where were the remaining fragments? Mitchell's expression turned grim. He had one. The final fragment. Mitchell hesitated before continuing. David had entrusted it to Marcus. He just didn't know it yet. Marcus insisted that was impossible. He would know if David had given him something that important. Mitchell told him to think, to remember what David had given him before the mission. Something personal, something Marcus would never part with. The memory surfaced with shocking clarity. The barracks before Coruscant, David handing him a weathered metal compass. Hold on to this for me, would you? Lucky charm, give it back when we return. Marcus had carried that compass for 5 years, a talisman of guilt and failure. His hand moved automatically to his pocket, fingers closing around the familiar shape. Mitchell confirmed what Marcus was beginning to understand. Inside the casing, microdot technology, the final encryption key, hidden in plain sight. For 5 years, Marcus had carried the key to David's legacy, unknowing and unaware. The weight of that revelation pressed down with suffocating force. Mitchell continued with mounting urgency. Conrad didn't know about the compass yet, but he was getting closer. The people he worked for were patient and methodical. They'd spent 5 years piecing together what happened in Coruscant, tracking the fragmented technology. Marcus needed to get the compass and Mitchell's fragment to Victoria before the board meeting. It was her only chance of maintaining control. And then, Mitchell added grimly, Marcus needed to finish what David started. Protect Guardian from falling into the wrong hands at all costs. The implication was clear. The same cost David had paid. Mitchell had one final warning before dropping Marcus at his vehicle. "Watch out for the girl," he said. "Lily." Marcus frowned, asking why specifically. Mitchell's expression darkened with knowledge Marcus didn't want confirmed, because Conrad knew her importance to Victoria and to the system. The words hung in the air, heavy with threat. Marcus demanded clarification. What did Mitchell mean? The colonel's response chilled him to the core. David had built redundancies into everything he created, including access protocols. If something happened to Victoria, Lily became the secondary access point. The biometric verification didn't rely solely on Victoria's DNA. It included Lily's as well. The horror of understanding crashed over Marcus. Conrad would use a child. Mitchell confirmed without hesitation. These people had no limits when billions in technology and global influence were at stake. He instructed Marcus to go directly to Victoria, share nothing over electronic channels, trust no one inside that building except her. As Mitchell's car disappeared up the exit ramp, Marcus stood in the empty garage processing everything he'd learned. The compass in his pocket seemed to pulse with new significance. No longer just a reminder of failure, but a key to David's final plan. His phone showed no signal again, just like before meeting Jennifer. The timing felt wrong, too convenient. A flash of movement in his peripheral vision served as his only warning. Marcus dropped and rolled toward the nearest vehicle, drawing the tactical folding knife from his ankle holster. The garage remained eerily silent, no movement visible in any direction. His phone vibrated, signal suddenly returned. A text from an unknown number appeared. "Behind you." Marcus pivoted, weapon ready, to see the black sedan hadn't left after all. Mitchell's window lowered. The colonel's voice carried clearly across the concrete expanse, just making sure Marcus's instincts were still sharp. They'd need to be for what came next. The window closed, and this time the car really did disappear into the night, leaving Marcus alone with more questions than answers. The drive home took Marcus through deserted streets, his mind cycling through contingencies and threat assessments. Mitchell's reappearance changed everything. The colonel's knowledge of Guardian, his surveillance of Conrad, his connection to the fragments, all of it suggested a deeper game being played at levels Marcus couldn't yet see. Mrs. Henderson was waiting when Marcus slipped into his apartment just after midnight. The elderly neighbor had been watching Tyler, as she often did when Marcus's work ran late. She reported that the boy had gone to bed without incident, his breathing steady, the new medication sample from the doctor working well. Marcus thanked her with genuine gratitude, then checked on Tyler himself. His son slept peacefully, one small hand clutching the edge of his blanket. Marcus stood in the doorway longer than necessary, watching the steady rise and fall of Tyler's chest. Everything he'd agreed to with Victoria, everything Mitchell had revealed about Coruscant and Guardian, all of it ultimately came down to protecting the innocent. The children who inherited the consequences of choices made by adults in rooms they'd never enter. Marcus returned to the kitchen, removing the compass from his pocket and setting it on the table beside Jennifer's tablet. Two pieces of David's puzzle, entrusted to him across 5 years in an ocean of guilt. The photograph on the refrigerator seemed to watch him. David's eternal grin, holding secrets Marcus was only beginning to understand. His phone rang, shattering the silence. Mrs. Henderson's number. His heart seized with immediate fear. She'd just left minutes ago, wouldn't call unless something was wrong with Tyler. Marcus answered before the second ring, already moving toward his son's room. The voice that greeted him wasn't Mrs. Henderson's. It was younger, panicked, sobbing. The words tumbled out in a rush of apology and fear. A man had come to the door, shown identification from Tyler's school, said there was an emergency with Tyler's asthma medication. Mrs. Henderson had believed him, had let him take Tyler. But when she'd called the school to confirm, they knew nothing about any emergency or any man being sent. Marcus's world stopped. His voice came out hollow, distant, as if someone else was speaking. What man? Where was Tyler? Mrs. Henderson's sobs intensified. She didn't know. He'd left 20 minutes ago, said he was bringing Tyler to Marcus at TechCore. She'd tried calling but hadn't been able to reach him. She was so sorry, so terribly sorry. The phone slipped from Marcus's numb fingers, clattering to the floor. Tyler's room stood empty, bed still warm from where his son had been sleeping moments before someone had taken him. The compass and tablet seemed to mock him from the kitchen table. David's legacy demanding a price Marcus hadn't agreed to pay. His training kicked in through the shock, forcing him to think tactically even as his heart shattered. This wasn't random. This was Conrad. This was retaliation for Marcus's investigation, for Jennifer's data, for getting too close. They'd gone after the one thing Marcus couldn't defend while maintaining his mission, his son. The phone rang again, unknown number. Marcus picked it up with shaking hands, already knowing who would be on the other end. Conrad's voice came smooth, almost friendly. Such a shame about the boathouse security, he commented conversationally. Real estate was so expensive these days. But that wasn't why he was calling. Marcus forced words through his constricted throat. If Conrad hurt his son, the threat died unfinished. Conrad chuckled. Tyler was perfectly safe, enjoying video games and snacks in a comfortable room. His medication had been administered on schedule. Conrad wasn't a monster after all. Marcus asked what Conrad wanted, though he already knew. The answer came with devastating precision. The compass, Victoria's cooperation, and most importantly, young Lily. Marcus was to bring the girl to TechCore's executive server room tomorrow at 8:45. He'd ensure Victoria provided her biometric authorization to access Guardian's core system. Marcus asked what happened if he refused. Conrad's response came cheerful, as if discussing weather. Then Tyler's medication would run out. Such a tragic accident when a child couldn't breathe, and medical response was delayed by unfortunate miscommunication. These things happened. Conrad gave Marcus 2 hours to comply, wished him good luck, and ended the call. Marcus sank to the floor, head in his hands, feeling the weight of every failure, every bad decision, every moment of hubris that had led to this. He thought he could protect Tyler while serving Victoria's mission. He'd been wrong. His phone buzzed with a final text, this one from Victoria. 3 words that would haunt him until this ended, one way or another. Trust no one. Marcus called Victoria at 12:47 in the morning. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp with alertness despite the hour. The words came out mechanical, stripped of emotion by sheer necessity. Tyler had been taken. Conrad had him. The demand was simple: Lily, the compass, and full access to Guardian by 8:45 a.m., or his son would suffocate when the medication ran out. Victoria's silence stretched for 3 seconds that felt like hours. When she spoke, the CEO veneer had vanished entirely. Where was Marcus now? His apartment. Was he secure? For the moment. She gave him an address 20 miles outside the city, coordinates to a property held under a shell company, a boathouse on Lake Mercer. She'd meet him there in 90 minutes with Lily. They'd coordinate the response together. Marcus started to object. Bringing Lily anywhere near this situation violated every protective instinct he possessed. Victoria cut through his protest with brutal clarity. Conrad already knew about Lily's biometric access. Whether they brought her or not, she was already a target. Better to control the situation than react to it. Marcus recognized the tactical logic even as everything in him rebelled against using a 7-year-old as part of any operational plan. He gathered what he needed in under 5 minutes. The compass, Jennifer's tablet, a go-bag he'd maintained since leaving the service that he'd hoped never to use again. The Glock from his nightstand, cleaned and loaded, felt like an old friend returning after a long absence. He was halfway to his car when his phone buzzed with a message from Mitchell. The colonel had been monitoring Conrad's communications. 4 mercenary contractors had just been activated. Former military, professionals. They'd be moving on multiple targets simultaneously. Marcus typed back quickly. Which targets? The response came immediate. Victoria's known safe houses, Jennifer Park's residence, and Marcus's apartment building. The last one sent him sprinting for his vehicle. Mrs. Henderson was still in that building, probably consumed with guilt over Tyler's abduction. He called her as he drove, telling her to leave immediately, to go to her sister's place and not return until he contacted her. She started to ask questions. Marcus raised his voice to a command pitch. Now, Mrs. Henderson, please, this isn't safe. The boathouse sat isolated among trees, a modest wooden structure with a small dock extending into dark water. Marcus arrived first, swept the perimeter with tactical precision, found nothing alarming. The interior was sparsely furnished, sitting area, kitchenette, two small bedrooms. Defensible positions were limited but adequate. He positioned himself with clear sight lines to the entrance and began reviewing Jennifer's data more thoroughly. The encryption subroutine she discovered was elegantly brutal. David had designed it to trigger if anyone attempted unauthorized extraction of Guardian's complete architecture. The system would fragment into 5 separate pieces, each containing essential components, but useless without the others. The coordinates embedded in the code pointed to physical locations where these fragments were stored. Jennifer had been right. Without the encryption key to decode those coordinates, they were meaningless strings of numbers. Marcus removed the compass from his pocket, studying it with new understanding. The inscription inside the lid had always been partially illegible, worn smooth by decades of use. Now he looked closer, saw what he'd missed before, not where, intentional obscuring. Someone had carefully ground away portions of the engraving to hide what it actually said. The remaining letters, when rearranged, spelled out a single word in David's careful script: Guardian. Headlights swept across the window. Marcus moved to cover, weapon ready, until he recognized Victoria's private vehicle. She emerged first, scanning the area with the same tactical awareness Marcus had employed. Lily followed, clutching Mr. Whiskers, her small face pinched with confusion and fear. The girl had been woken in the middle of the night and taken from her home without real explanation. Victoria had told her only that they were going somewhere safe for a little while. Marcus holstered his weapon before stepping into view. Lily's face transformed when she saw him, relief washing away some of the fear. She ran to him with the unself-conscious trust of childhood. He knelt, catching her small form, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with that trust. Victoria approached more slowly, her expression revealing the toll of maintaining composure. She'd changed from her executive suit into practical clothing: dark jeans, boots, a jacket that could conceal a weapon. Marcus guided them inside, secured the door, and began his brief. He showed Victoria Jennifer's findings, explained Mitchell's revelation about the compass and fragments, detailed Conrad's threat timeline. 8:45 a.m. was 6 hours away. They needed a strategy that would extract Tyler without giving Conrad what he wanted. Victoria listened without interrupting, her mind visibly processing the tactical realities. She asked the question Marcus had been avoiding. Could they fake Lily's biometric authorization? Jennifer might be able to create something that would pass initial verification, enough to buy time during the extraction. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Mitchell had a fragment. Marcus had the compass. Where were the other 3? Marcus pulled up the coordinate data. 2 appeared to be in secure facilities overseas, 1 in Switzerland, 1 in Singapore. The 5th was local, somewhere in the city, but the exact location remained encrypted. Victoria made a decision with the swift certainty that had built her company. She'd authorized the access. Real authorization, not a fake. Once Tyler was secure and they were clear, they'd trigger David's failsafe. Destroy Guardian completely rather than let Conrad weaponize it. The words came out flat, final. 5 years of work, her late husband's legacy, billions in company value, all of it expendable compared to the life of a child. Marcus felt something shift in his perception of Victoria Hayes. The calculation wasn't cold. It was the opposite. It was someone who understood priority with absolute clarity. Lily had moved to the window, staring out at the dark water. Victoria watched her daughter with an expression Marcus recognized from his own mirror. The face of a parent measuring every decision against a child's future. A sound outside froze them both. Not loud, a soft scrape of metal on wood, barely audible. Marcus moved instantly, gesturing Victoria toward the back bedroom with Lily. She grabbed her daughter and complied without hesitation. Marcus killed the lights, let his eyes adjust to darkness, and positioned himself at an angle to the door. The explosion came without warning. Flashbang grenade through the window, detonating in a burst of blinding light and deafening sound. Marcus had closed his eyes at the first tinkle of breaking glass, preserving his night vision. He fired twice toward the window as shapes poured through, rolled left toward the kitchen counter for cover. Suppressed gunfire tore through the space he'd just occupied. Professional, coordinated, exactly what Mitchell had warned about. Marcus counted 4 shooters entering through different points. Window, main door, rear entrance. They'd studied the structure's layout, planned their approach. This wasn't improvised response. This was prepared operation. Marcus fired 3 controlled shots, dropped one attacker near the main door. Return fire forced him deeper into the kitchen. He could hear Lily's muffled crying from the back bedroom, Victoria's low voice trying to calm her. The attackers would push toward that sound. They wanted Lily alive. That gave Marcus an advantage in ruthlessness. He could shoot to kill. They had to exercise restraint. A figure rounded the corner toward the bedroom hallway. Marcus put 2 rounds center mass, watched him fall. That left 2 active shooters, plus whoever was coordinating outside. The math wasn't favorable, but Marcus had fought worse odds in worse terrain. The difference was, he'd had a team then. Now he was alone against professionals with a woman and child to protect. The bedroom door splintered under sustained fire. Victoria's voice rose sharp. "Lily, stay behind me." Then her own weapon discharged, the crack distinct from the suppressed firearms. She'd hit someone. Marcus heard the grunt of impact, the clatter of a weapon falling. Good. Victoria could shoot. That changed calculations. Marcus used the distraction to advance, clearing the living area. One attacker remained between him and the bedroom. The man had pressed himself against the wall, trying to get an angle on Victoria without exposing himself to Marcus's position. Marcus fired once, missed intentionally high. The attacker flinched, revealed his position, and Marcus's second shot didn't miss. Silence fell, broken only by Lily's sobbing and the ringing aftermath of gunfire in enclosed space. Marcus did rapid combat assessment. 4 attackers down, 1 wounded but alive in the bedroom. He secured the living area first, checking each body for signs of life and weapons. All carried professional gear, custom firearms, tactical vests, encrypted communications. Marcus entered the bedroom to find Victoria standing over a 5th man clutching his shoulder, her pistol steady despite the slight tremor in her free hand. Lily huddled in the corner, Mr. Whiskers pressed to her face, eyes squeezed shut. The wounded attacker met Marcus's gaze with professional assessment. No fear, just calculation of his own tactical situation. Victoria's question came quiet but intense. "Who sent you?" The man smiled through his pain, shook his head. Wrong question. The right question was how many more teams Conrad had deployed. Marcus zip-tied the man's hands with practiced efficiency, checked his wound, through and through on the shoulder, painful but not immediately life-threatening. He'd lived long enough for questioning. The sound of an engine starting outside pulled Marcus back to the window. A 6th person, the coordinator, was fleeing in the attack vehicle. Marcus caught a glimpse of the driver through the windshield as the SUV accelerated away. Silver hair, familiar profile. Victor Reese, TechCore's head of security, the man responsible for protecting Victoria and Lily, had just led an assault team to capture them. Marcus turned back to Victoria, saw the recognition dawning on her face as well. She'd trusted Reese for 3 years, had relied on him to implement the very security protocols he'd been systematically undermining. The betrayal hit harder than the bullets that had torn through her safe house. Her hand tightened on her weapon, knuckles white. Reese had access to everything. Her movements, her safe locations, her security details. He'd been feeding Conrad intelligence from the inside. Victoria's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, but the content made the sender obvious. "Close call, Victoria. Next time I'll send more than 5. Bring Lily to TechCore at 8:45. No tricks, no backup, no clever plans. Just you, the girl, and Kane with his compass. Or Tyler dies and Lily becomes our next objective anyway. You have 5 hours." Marcus checked his watch, 2:37 a.m. They'd lost critical time. He examined Victoria more closely in the dim light, noticed for the first time the dark stains spreading across her left thigh. She'd been hit. The adrenaline had masked the pain initially, but now she swayed slightly, gripping the doorframe for support. He moved to her immediately, guiding her to sit on the bed. Victoria tried to wave him off, insisting it was just a graze, but when Marcus cut away the fabric of her jeans, the wound told a different story. Bullet had torn through muscle tissue, nicked something arterial based on the blood flow. Not immediately fatal, but serious enough to require medical attention soon. Marcus applied pressure, pulled emergency medical supplies from his go bag. Victoria hissed in pain as he worked, but didn't cry out. Lily had crept closer, watching with wide eyes as Marcus applied a compression bandage and makeshift tourniquet. The little girl asked in a small voice if her mommy was going to die. Victoria's response came firm despite her obvious pain. The conviction in that single syllable carried weight beyond the word itself. She reached for Lily's hand, squeezed it gently. Marcus was going to make sure of that. The girl looked at Marcus with absolute faith, and he felt the crushing pressure of expectations he wasn't certain he could fulfill. His phone rang. Jennifer Park's number. Marcus answered to hear ragged breathing, suppressed sounds of pain. The engineer's voice came strained, urgent. They'd hit her apartment 30 minutes ago. 3 men, professional. She'd managed to wound one and escape through a back exit she'd installed specifically for this possibility. But she'd been shot in the process, shoulder injury, losing blood. She'd made it to her car, was driving but didn't know where to go. Couldn't go to a hospital. They'd be watching. Marcus gave her the boathouse coordinates, told her to hurry. They needed her technical expertise anyway for what came next. Jennifer acknowledged and ended the call. Marcus returned his attention to Victoria's leg. The bleeding had slowed under the tourniquet, but she'd need proper medical care within hours or risk permanent damage. They couldn't stay at the boathouse. Reese knew the location, would return with reinforcements. Victoria asked about alternatives. Marcus had one option. His former teammate Ramirez ran a private security operation from a warehouse in the industrial district. Off the books, no questions asked, and most importantly, they had a doctor on staff. Former combat medic who'd patched up more gunshot wounds than most ER physicians. Marcus placed the call. Ramirez answered with characteristic directness, listened to the situation, agreed immediately to provide sanctuary. Getting Victoria to the vehicle proved challenging. She couldn't put weight on the injured leg without the wound bleeding through the bandage. Marcus ended up carrying her, one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back. She held Lily's hand with one of her own, keeping her daughter close as they made their way to her car. Marcus noticed Victoria's slight frame, the way pain had carved lines around her mouth and eyes. The untouchable CEO had become startlingly human. Jennifer arrived as they were loading Victoria into the back seat. The engineer's condition was concerning, pale, sweating, one arm hanging useless at her side with blood soaking through her improvised bandage. But her eyes remained sharp, focused. She handed Marcus a laptop. Everything they'd need to access Guardian remotely was loaded on it. She'd also prepared a corruption protocol that would trigger if Conrad attempted to extract the complete system. He'd get access, start the download, but the data would be poisoned, unusable. Marcus helped Jennifer into the passenger seat, then took the wheel. Lily sat him back with Victoria, both of them watching the boathouse recede through the rear window. The little girl's voice came quiet. Why are bad people so mean? The question hung in the air, too profound for easy answer. Victoria pulled her daughter closer. Because they want things more than they care about people. But we're going to stop them. Lily seemed satisfied with that, settling against her mother's side. The drive to Ramirez's warehouse took 40 minutes through pre-dawn streets. Marcus used the time to refine his understanding of their tactical situation. Conrad had demonstrated superior intelligence gathering, had positioned assets to move simultaneously on multiple targets, and had successfully isolated them from normal support structures. Law enforcement was compromised. Reese's access meant Conrad knew which officers were on Victoria's protection detail. Traditional security companies were out. Even hospitals posed risks. But Conrad had also revealed constraints. He needed Lily alive and cooperative for the biometric authorization. He needed the compass, which meant he still hadn't located the final fragment independently. And most critically, he was operating under time pressure. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. If he didn't have Guardian secured by then, his political maneuvering to remove Victoria would be exposed before he could capitalize on it. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Mitchell. The colonel had been monitoring communications. Conrad was scrambling to locate them, had teams sweeping known TechCore safe houses and properties associated with Victoria. But Mitchell had also acquired something useful: the access codes for TechCore's maintenance tunnels and service corridors. Paths through the building that bypassed standard security checkpoints. When the time came to infiltrate, Marcus would have routes Conrad wouldn't anticipate. Ramirez met them at the warehouse entrance, his massive frame somehow projecting both threat and welcome simultaneously. The former Special Forces operator took in the scene. Two wounded women, a frightened child, and his old teammate carrying weapons and wearing the expression of someone deep in hostile action. No questions, just immediate movement to get them inside and secured. The warehouse interior was exactly what Marcus expected. State-of-the-art security monitoring, weapons lockers, a small medical suite with proper equipment. Dr. Sarah Chen, the former combat medic, went to work immediately on Victoria. The CEO's makeshift tourniquet had saved her from bleeding out, but the femoral artery had been nicked. Chen worked with efficient precision, cleaning the wound, suturing the artery, administering antibiotics, and pain management. Jennifer's injury was less severe, but still concerning. Through and through gunshot to the shoulder, no major vessels hit, but significant tissue damage. Chen cleaned and dressed it, immobilized Jennifer's arm in a proper sling, and hooked her up to an IV for fluid replacement. Both women would need follow-up care and physical therapy, but they'd survive. Lily watched the medical procedures with solemn intensity, asking questions about what Dr. Chen was doing and why. The physician answered each one with gentle honesty, neither condescending nor sheltering the child from reality. Marcus saw Victoria relax fractionally, grateful that her daughter was being treated with respect even in these circumstances. Ramirez pulled Marcus aside while the women were being treated. The warehouse had secure communications and could serve as a base of operations. But his friend wanted the full story. Marcus gave it to him. David Hayes, the Guardian technology, Conrad's conspiracy, Tyler's abduction, everything. Ramirez listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When Marcus finished, Ramirez asked the critical question, what did Marcus need? The answer was complex but came down to three things. First, a secure location for Lily while the operation went down. Second, tactical support for the extraction. Marcus couldn't infiltrate TechCore, locate Tyler, and protect Victoria simultaneously. Third, contingency planning for the worst-case scenario where Conrad got what he wanted and they had to trigger the failsafe. Ramirez nodded slowly. He had a four-man team on standby, all former military, all people he'd trust with his life. They could position around TechCore, provide overwatch and extraction support. As for Lily, the warehouse was as secure as anywhere. Chen could stay with her while the rest of them handled the operation. Marcus felt the first stirring of possibility, the sense that maybe this wasn't completely impossible. With proper support, with Mitchell's intelligence and Jennifer's technical capabilities, they might actually extract Tyler without sacrificing Guardian. The odds were still terrible, but they existed. Victoria called Marcus over to where Chen had finished treating her leg. The pain medication had taken edge off the CEO's expression, but her focus remained laser sharp. She'd been thinking about Conrad's demand. 8:45 was specific, 15 minutes before the board meeting. He wanted Guardian secured before facing the board, wanted the leverage of already possessing the technology when they moved to remove her. But what if they moved first? Victoria's board allies were limited but real. If she could expose Conrad's activities before he made his move, present evidence of his corporate espionage and conspiracy, she might fracture his support. The board wouldn't back a known traitor no matter how much they disliked Victoria's leadership. Marcus saw the strategy immediately, go on offense instead of reaction. Jennifer spoke up from her medical bed, voice rough but determined. She could help with that. The data she'd compiled, combined with what Mitchell had gathered, would be enough to prove Conrad's connection to foreign interests and technological theft. If they could broadcast that evidence during the board meeting, make it public and undeniable, Conrad's position would collapse. The plan took shape through rapid discussion. Jennifer would prepare the evidence for broadcast, create a package that could override TechCore's standard presentation systems. Mitchell would provide updated intelligence on Conrad's movements and security positioning. Ramirez's team would establish overwatch positions around TechCore, ready to intervene if the situation deteriorated into open conflict. Marcus would infiltrate using the maintenance corridors Mitchell had mapped, locate Tyler using whatever means necessary, and extract him before 8:45. Once Tyler was secure, Victoria would authorize the broadcast. Guardian's failsafe would remain ready as the final option. If Conrad somehow secured the system despite their efforts, they'd burn it all down rather than let him win. Lily had fallen asleep in a corner of the medical suite, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin, exhaustion finally overcoming fear. Victoria watched her daughter with an expression that made Marcus's chest tighten. The CEO had built an empire, commanded thousands of employees, controlled billions in assets. But the only thing that truly mattered to her slept in a borrowed blanket in a warehouse medical bay. Marcus approached Victoria, keeping his voice low. He needed to know one thing. If it came down to a choice, Tyler's life or Guardian's destruction, which took priority? Victoria met his gaze without hesitation. The child. Always the child. Marcus nodded, accepting her answer. That clarity of purpose made her someone he could trust absolutely. The hours before dawn passed in preparation. Ramirez's team conducted gear checks and studied building schematics. Jennifer worked on her laptop despite her injury, fingers flying across keys with her good hand. Mitchell sent continuous updates. Conrad's teams had failed to locate them, were growing increasingly agitated. Security at TechCore had been tripled. Marcus sat with the compass, turning it over in his hands, trying to understand David's thinking 5 years ago. His friend had known the risks, had built contingencies upon contingencies, had trusted Marcus with the final piece, even knowing Marcus might not survive to use it. The inscription inside the lid seemed to pulse with meaning. Guardian, not just a project name, a promise. Protect what matters. Mr. Chen approached with 2 items, a fresh tactical vest and a medical kit specifically designed for field operations. She treated enough special operators to know what Marcus would need. The vest was lightweight but rated to stop most small arms fire. The medical kit contained combat-grade supplies for treating gunshot wounds, penetrating trauma, and rapid stabilization. Chen's expression made clear she expected Marcus to need both before this ended. Victoria tried to stand, testing her injured leg. Chen immediately moved to assist, but Victoria waved her off. She managed 3 steps before pain forced her to grip a table for support. The CEO's frustration was palpable. She was accustomed to controlling situations through presence and force of will, but her body had become a limitation. Marcus recognized the adjustment. He'd gone through similar reckoning after Coruscant, learning to accept that damage changed capability. The first light of dawn crept through the warehouse windows, 4 hours until Conrad's deadline. Marcus reviewed the plan one final time with the team, checking for vulnerabilities and contingencies. Ramirez would position his team at 5:30, giving them time to establish Overwatch before TechCore's main staff arrival. Jennifer would upload the evidence package remotely at 8:30, timing it to go live during the board meeting's opening minutes. Marcus would enter through the maintenance tunnels at 6, using the early hour when security presence was minimal. Victoria pulled Marcus aside one final time before he departed. She pressed something into his hand, a small device that looked like a standard access card, but with additional circuitry visible along the edge. CEO override, she explained. It would open any door in TechCore, disable any electronic lock, and grant access to systems even Reese couldn't block. Her voice dropped to barely audible. Bring Tyler home, whatever it takes. Marcus pocketed the card, checked his weapons one last time, and headed for the door. Ramirez clasped his shoulder in the warrior's grip of comrades heading into uncertain combat. Jennifer gave him a thumbs up with her good hand. Lily had woken, was watching from Victoria's side with those 2 old eyes that had seen more violence in one night than most children experienced in lifetimes. The little girl's voice stopped Marcus at the threshold. Mr. Whiskers says you'll win because you're fighting for someone you love. The observation, delivered with childhood's absolute conviction, hit harder than any tactical briefing. Marcus knelt, meeting Lily's gaze at eye level. He'd do everything he could. That was all anyone could promise. Lily nodded solemnly, satisfied with the truth. Outside, the city was waking up, oblivious to the private war being waged in its corporate towers and industrial districts. Marcus drove toward TechCore with dawn breaking behind him, carrying the weight of too many promises to too many people. The compass sat heavy in his pocket, David's legacy demanding completion. Tyler was somewhere in that building, frightened and alone, counting on his father to do the impossible. Marcus had done impossible things before, in deserts halfway around the world, with brothers in arms who'd believed in each other absolutely. He'd failed those brothers once, failed David when it mattered most. The guilt of Coruscant had shaped 5 years of his life, driving every decision, coloring every interaction. But maybe that guilt had been misplaced. Maybe David's sacrifice had been exactly what he'd intended. Not failure, but completion of a mission Marcus was only now beginning to understand. The maintenance entrance to Tech Core sat unmarked on a side street, used by service vehicles and contract workers who kept the building functional. Marcus swiped Victoria's override card, watched the heavy door click open, and stepped into the building's hidden architecture. The real infiltration had begun. The maintenance corridors beneath Tech Core smelled of concrete dust and machine oil. Marcus moved through the narrow passages with practiced silence, following Mitchell's mapped route toward the executive levels. The building's infrastructure surrounded him: electrical conduits, ventilation shafts, water pipes, all the hidden systems that kept the corporate world above functioning while remaining invisible to those who profited from them. His earpiece crackled with Ramirez's voice. Teams in position, north side, south side, and east approach all covered. West side had too much open ground for effective overwatch, but 3 out of 4 angles was better than Marcus had expected. Mitchell's voice joined the channel moments later. Conrad arrived 20 minutes ago with Reese. They're in the server room, sub-level 3. 6 security personnel with them, all armed. Tyler's confirmed present. Marcus's heart rate spiked at the confirmation. His son was alive, was in the building, was close enough to reach. The knowledge steadied him even as it intensified the stakes. He checked his watch, 6:47, almost 2 hours until Conrad's deadline, but early arrival might catch them off guard. The element of surprise was the only real advantage Marcus possessed. Jennifer's voice came through next, strained with pain but focused. Upload package ready. Evidence compiled from 19 different sources, cross-referenced and verified. Once it hits TechCore's network, every terminal in the building will receive it simultaneously. Conrad won't be able to suppress it fast enough. Marcus acknowledged, continuing his advance through the tunnels. The route Mitchell had mapped had brought Marcus to a service elevator typically used for moving equipment between floors. Victoria's override card granted access, and Marcus ascended alone in the cramped space. The elevator opened into another maintenance corridor, this one running parallel to the executive server room. Through the wall, Marcus could hear muffled voices, Conrad's distinctive cadence, Reese's rougher tones, and underneath it all, a child crying. Tyler's sobs cut through Marcus like physical wounds. His son's voice called out, asking for his father, asking why this was happening, begging to go home. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cool metal of the wall, forcing himself to breathe through the surge of paternal fury. Rage made operators sloppy. He needed cold precision, not hot emotion. The access point Mitchell had identified was an old ventilation grate, wide enough for a man to squeeze through if he moved carefully. Marcus removed the grate with slow deliberation, minimizing noise. The shaft beyond descended at a 45-degree angle, dropping toward the server room's elevated ceiling. Marcus wedged himself into the confined space and began the controlled descent. The server room spread below him through the grate's slats. Banks of equipment lined the walls, climate control keeping the temperature precisely regulated. In the center, a glass-enclosed control station housed the primary terminals. Conrad stood at one console, Reese at another. 6 security personnel were positioned strategically, 2 by the main entrance, 2 covering the emergency exits, 2 mobile patrols circulating. And there, in a chair near Conrad's position, sat Tyler. His son looked small and terrified, arms wrapped around himself, face red from crying. The inhaler sat on the console beside Conrad, deliberately visible, deliberately out of Tyler's reach. The message was clear: cooperation or suffocation. Marcus assessed angles and distances with the automatic calculations of his training. 7 hostiles, all armed with professional-grade weapons. Tyler in the center of the room, maximum exposure. Any firefight would put his son directly in the crossfire. The tactical equation was brutal. He couldn't shoot his way to Tyler without risking the boy's life. Conrad checked his watch, then addressed Tyler with false sympathy. Marcus's audio pickup caught the words clearly. "Your father should be here soon. He loves you very much. Enough to do exactly what I tell him." Tyler's response came defiant despite his tears. "My dad's going to beat you up." Conrad smiled. "Perhaps, But first he'll have to choose. You or his principles. We'll see which matters more. Marcus's jaw tightened. The observation was calculated cruelty, designed to prey on Tyler's fears and Marcus's guilt. But it also revealed Conrad's fundamental misunderstanding. This wasn't a choice between son and principles. Tyler was the principal. Everything else was negotiable. Movement near the main entrance drew Marcus's attention. Victoria was arriving, supported by Jennifer, both women moving with obvious pain. Lily walked between them, holding her mother's hand, Mr. Whiskers clutched in her other arm. The security personnel stepped aside, allowing them to enter. Conrad's expression shifted to satisfaction. Punctual as always, Victoria. And you brought the girl. Excellent. Victoria's voice came cold and controlled despite her injury. Where's Tyler? Let him see his father's safe and we'll discuss terms. Conrad gestured toward Tyler. The boy's fine, as promised, though his breathing is getting a bit labored. Perhaps his medication is wearing off? Tyler's wheezing had indeed intensified. The familiar sound that Marcus knew meant his son's lungs were constricting. Panic edged into the boy's crying. Jennifer moved as if to go to him, but Reese blocked her path. Conrad continued his monologue. I believe we're still waiting for one person. Where's your attack dog, Victoria? Where's Kane? Marcus made his decision. Remaining hidden gained nothing when Tyler needed his inhaler immediately. He kicked out the ventilation grate, dropped through the opening with controlled fall, and landed in a three-point stance. 7 weapons immediately trained on him. Marcus straightened slowly, hands visible and empty. Tyler's cry of relief and fear mixed together. Dad! Marcus met his son's eyes, conveyed calm confidence he didn't entirely feel. Hey, buddy, sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. The attempt at normalcy in impossibly abnormal circumstances made Tyler's breathing hitch, but the boy nodded, understanding his father's message. They'd get through this together. Conrad applauded slowly. Dramatic entrance. Very action hero. Now shall we conduct our business like civilized people? Marcus scanned the room, cataloging positions and distances. Ramirez, you getting this? The affirmative came immediately through his earpiece, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Conrad laid out his terms with the precision of a man who believed he'd already won. The compass, access to Guardian via Lily's biometric authorization, and safe passage for himself and his team out of the building. In exchange, Tyler and the others would be released unharmed. Simple transaction, mutually beneficial. Marcus removed the compass from his pocket, held it up where Conrad could see. This is what David died protecting. You think I'll just hand it over? Conrad's expression didn't change. I think you'll do whatever necessary to save your son. That's not weakness, Kane. That's being human. Most people would make the same choice. The words carried weight beyond their surface meaning. Conrad was offering Marcus absolution, permission to surrender without shame. Your son or a dead man's technology. Choose. Marcus felt the compass's familiar weight, felt the years of guilt and obligation pressing down. He'd spent 5 years believing he failed David, failed to protect his brother in arms when it mattered most. But David had known exactly what he was doing in Coruscant, had made his choice consciously, deliberately, with full understanding of consequences. He'd trusted Marcus to make the right choices too, even if those choices weren't obvious in the moment. The real failure would be letting Conrad turn David's sacrifice into a weapon. Marcus met Victoria's eyes across the room. She gave the smallest nod, understanding what he was asking. Tyler or Guardian, the child or the legacy? Her answer remained what it had been at the warehouse. The child, always the child. That clarity gave Marcus what he needed. He addressed Conrad directly. You're right, I'll do whatever necessary to save Tyler. But you're wrong about one thing, Victoria's voice joined his. This isn't a transaction. It's a trap. Conrad's confidence flickered momentarily. What trap? You're surrounded, your son is dying, you have nothing. Jennifer's fingers moved across her phone screen. The evidence broadcast just went live. Every computer in this building, every board member's device, every TechCore employee logged into the network. They're all receiving proof of your conspiracy right now. Conrad's face went pale, then flushed with rage. Reese lunged for Jennifer, but she'd anticipated the move, stepped aside despite her injury. Ramirez's voice filled the channel. Conrad's extraction team just tried to grab Lily from the school Marcus gave as her location. We were waiting. 4 hostiles secured, no casualties. Conrad spun toward the control console, pulling up security feeds. The realization that his backup plan had failed showed in the way his hands trembled on the keyboard. Marcus used the distraction to move closer to Tyler. 2 steps, then 3. The security personnel were looking to Conrad for orders, their formation breaking as confusion spread. Reese pulled his weapon, aimed at Victoria. If this goes wrong, she dies first. Conrad regained some composure. Stand down, Kane. I still have leverage. He grabbed Tyler, pulled the boy against him as a shield, pressed a gun to the child's head. Tyler screamed. Marcus froze, every protective instinct screaming against the sight of his son in mortal danger. Conrad's voice came steady now, backed by desperation. Here's the new deal. I walk out with the boy and the compass. When I'm clear, I release him. Try to stop me, and Tyler dies. The room held his breath. Marcus calculated angles, distances, possibilities. He could draw and fire before Conrad pulled the trigger, but the margin was impossibly thin. One hesitation, one miscalculation, and Tyler would pay the price. Victoria started to speak, but Marcus raised a hand. This was his decision to make. Marcus met Tyler's terrified gaze, saw his son trying desperately to be brave. The boy had spent 7 years watching his father choose duty and sacrifice, had learned that real strength meant enduring pain for the greater good. But that wasn't the lesson Marcus wanted Tyler to carry forward. Some things mattered more than missions. Some choices were simple, even when they cost everything. The compass came out of Marcus's pocket. He held it up, let Conrad see it clearly. You win. Take it. Take Guardian. Just let my son go. The words felt like betrayal of David, of Victoria, of everything they'd fought for. But they were also absolute truth. Tyler's life was worth more than any technology, any legacy, any promise to the dead. Conrad's expression showed vindication. Bring it here, slowly. Marcus started forward, each step measured and deliberate. Tyler's eyes tracked him with desperate hope. 3 feet, 2 feet, close enough to see the sweat on Conrad's forehead. Smell his expensive cologne mixed with fierce stink. Marcus extended the compass. Conrad reached for it. And in that moment of transition, when greed overrode caution, Marcus moved. He dropped the compass, grabbed Conrad's gun hand, twisted with all his strength. The weapon discharged, bullet going wide. Marcus pulled Tyler away from Conrad, shoved his son toward Victoria. Run! Everything happened simultaneously. The security personnel opened fire. Marcus returned fire with his Glock, dropping 2 immediately. Ramirez's team breached through the walls, precisely placed charges blowing open 3 different entry points. Smoke and noise filled the space. Jennifer triggered something on her laptop, and every screen in the server room displayed the same message. Guardian Protocol Purging. Authorization. David Hayes. Conrad screamed in rage and despair. No, stop it! Stop the purge! Reese tried to reach the control console, but Victoria shot him. The head of security went down, clutching his shoulder. Jennifer's voice rose above the chaos. It can't be stopped. Once initiated, the fail-safe runs to completion. Guardian is erasing itself across all fragments, all backups, everything. Marcus had Tyler behind him, was covering their position with suppressive fire. Ramirez appeared through the smoke, massive and unstoppable, his team providing covering fire. Get them out! Marcus pushed Tyler toward his former teammate. Ramirez caught the boy, started back toward the breach point. But Conrad had recovered his weapon, was tracking Ramirez's retreat. Marcus saw the shot coming, saw Conrad's finger tightening on the trigger, aimed at Tyler's back. He threw himself into the line of fire. The bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him around, sending him down hard. The pain came white-hot and all-consuming, but Marcus's training kept him moving. He fired twice from the ground. Both shots hit Conrad's center mass. The COO stumbled backward, crashed against the server rack, slid down, leaving a smear of blood. His eyes remained open, shocked and accusing, as life left them. Reese tried to crawl toward Conrad's body, but Victoria stood over him, weapon steady. The fight had gone out of TechCore's former head of security. He lay still, hands visible, surrendering. The screens continued their merciless countdown. Guardian Purge. 89% complete. Years of work, billions in value, David Hayes' final legacy, all of it disappearing into digital oblivion. Victoria watched it happen with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Not grief, exactly, something closer to relief. Ramirez returned, medical kit in hand, went to work on Marcus's shoulder. The wound was through and through, painful but manageable. Tyler hovered nearby, tears streaming, asking if his dad was okay. Marcus managed a pained smile. Been through worse, buddy. This is nothing. The lie was obvious but necessary. Building security was responding, drawn by the sounds of gunfire and explosions. But Mitchell's voice came through with reassurance. I've been feeding them false information about the breach locations. By the time they figure out where you really are, you'll be clear. Ramirez coordinated the extraction, his team moving with practiced efficiency. Jennifer remained at her console, watching Guardian's death throes. Purge, 97% complete. She turned to Victoria, apology in her expression. 5 years of work. David's dream. I'm sorry. Victoria shook her head, leaning heavily on Lily. The dream was protecting people from surveillance and oppression, not becoming a weapon for the highest bidder. David would understand. The final percentage ticked over. Purge, 100% complete. Guardian protocol terminated. All data destroyed. David Hayes. Final authorization acknowledged. The screens went dark. In server rooms in Switzerland and Singapore, in secure facilities and hidden locations around the world, the same erasure was occurring. Guardian had ceased to exist. Conrad's body lay still against the servers. Reese was zip-tied and under guard. The cost of victory surrounded them in spent brass and blood. But Tyler was safe. Lily was safe. And the technology that had demanded so much sacrifice would never be used to harm anyone. The extraction moved fast. Ramirez's team provided cover as they made their way through the breached walls, into the maintenance quarters, toward the service entrance where vehicles waited. Marcus carried Tyler despite his wounded shoulder, unwilling to let his son out of reach for even a moment. The boy clung to him, face buried against his father's neck, breathing easier now with his inhaler restored. They emerged into early morning sunlight. Police sirens wailed in the distance, drawn by multiple reports of explosions and gunfire at TechCore Industries. But Ramirez's extraction vehicles were anonymous, blending into normal traffic as they departed in different directions. Mitchell's voice came one final time through the earpiece. You did it. David would be proud. Marcus wasn't sure about that. He'd destroyed what David built, had chosen his son over David's vision of a more secure world. But maybe that was exactly what David would have wanted. Maybe the real lesson of Coruscant wasn't about sacrifice and duty. Maybe it was about knowing when to let go, when to choose life over abstract principles. The safe house Ramirez provided was comfortable but unremarkable, a suburban rental that could have belonged to anyone. Tyler fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by fear and adrenaline crash. Marcus sat beside his son's bed, watching him breathe, counting each steady inhalation and exhalation like precious gifts. Victoria was in another room, getting her leg properly treated by Dr. Chen, who'd arrived with additional medical supplies. Jennifer had passed out from pain and blood loss, was sleeping under sedation. Lily had curled up next to her mother, refusing to leave Victoria's side. The little girl's resilience amazed Marcus. She'd witnessed violence and terror, but hadn't broken. Ramirez found Marcus an hour later, brought him coffee and news. Conrad was dead, officially killed during a corporate espionage operation gone wrong. Reese was in custody, singing like a bird to avoid terrorism charges. The evidence broadcast had worked. TechCore's board was in emergency session, several members already demanding investigations. Victoria's position was secure for now, though the company's stock had crashed when Guardian's destruction became public. Marcus asked about his teammates' assessment of the operation. Ramirez was quiet for a moment. You won, brother. Got your boy back. Stopped the bad guys. Protected the innocent. That's a complete mission by any standard. But Marcus could hear the unspoken qualifier. The cost had been high. Ramirez himself had taken a bullet in the leg during the breach, would walk with a permanent limp. Jennifer's shoulder would heal but never regain full function. Victoria's company was crippled. Conrad and 2 security personnel were dead. Winning didn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just felt like surviving with slightly fewer losses than the enemy. Marcus understood that truth from countless operations, but it hit differently when his son was sleeping in the next room. Safe because Marcus had been willing to sacrifice anything and everything else. The weeks that followed blurred together. Police interviews, corporate investigations, media coverage that turned the TechCore incident into front-page news. Victoria handled the public relations nightmare with impressive skill, framing the narrative as a heroic defense against industrial espionage while minimizing the true scope of what Guardian represented. Marcus returned to his apartment, found it too empty, too quiet. Mrs. Henderson came back from her sister's, apologized continuously for Tyler's abduction, until Marcus finally convinced her he held no blame. The older woman had been deceived by professionals, had done exactly what any reasonable person would do. Tyler struggled with nightmares, would wake up screaming for his father. Dr. Chen recommended a child psychologist specializing in trauma. The therapy sessions helped, slowly. Tyler talked about the scary man who'd taken him, about being afraid he'd never see his dad again, about the sounds of gunfire and explosions. The psychologist assured Marcus this was normal processing, that Tyler would recover with time and support. 1 month after the incident, Marcus received a message from Victoria, simple and direct. Park tomorrow 2 p.m. There was a particular park equidistant between their homes, a place with playgrounds and walking paths. Marcus agreed, brought Tyler along. Victoria was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench with Lily. The CEO's leg was still in a brace, would require several more months of physical therapy. But she was walking, was healing. Lily saw Tyler and ran over with genuine joy, the two children greeting each other like old friends bonded by shared trauma. Marcus sat beside Victoria, watching the kids move toward the playground equipment. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes before Victoria spoke. The board forced me to step down as CEO. Temporary medical leave officially, probably permanent once they find a replacement they like better. Marcus asked if she minded. Victoria considered the question. A month ago, I would have. The company was everything. David's legacy, my identity, my purpose. She gestured toward Lily, now climbing on monkey bars with Tyler's enthusiastic encouragement. But watching her laugh like that, seeing her just be a kid without the weight of the world pressing down, maybe losing the company is a gift in disguise. Marcus understood that sentiment more than he could articulate. Sometimes you had to lose what you thought mattered to discover what actually did. Victoria turned to face him directly. I never properly thanked you for saving Lily at the boathouse, for risking everything to stop Conrad, for choosing Tyler over Guardian when it came down to it. Marcus shook his head. I destroyed 5 years of David's work, erased technology that could have protected millions of people. Some might say I failed him. Victoria's voice came firm, allowing no argument. You protected his daughter. You demonstrated that human life matters more than any invention. That's exactly what David believed. You didn't fail him. You honored him in the only way that really counts. The words settled something inside Marcus that had been restless and uncertain. Lily's voice called out from the playground. Mommy, Mr. Kane, watch this. Both adults turned their attention to the children. Lily was showing Tyler how to cross the monkey bars, the two of them coaching each other through the challenge. Victoria's observation came soft. They're good for each other. Lily needs someone who understands what she went through. Tyler needs someone who makes him feel brave instead of afraid. Marcus nodded. Maybe they could arrange more of these meetings. Let the kids build a friendship that might help them both heal. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park. Other families played nearby, living normal lives with ordinary problems. Marcus had spent years feeling separate from that normalcy, marked by his military service and subsequent losses. But maybe the distance wasn't as vast as he'd believed. Maybe he'd been a father all along, had just needed circumstances desperate enough to clarify his priorities absolutely. Tyler ran back to them, breathless and happy. Dad, Lily says her mom might buy a house near us. Is that true? Marcus looked at Victoria questioningly. She offered a small smile. I've been looking at properties in this neighborhood. Quieter than downtown, better schools, good for Lily. Tyler's excitement was palpable. Can she? Please? The transparent hope in his son's voice made Marcus's chest ache in the best way. Victoria addressed Tyler directly. Would you like that? If Lily and I lived nearby, we could have dinners together sometimes. Maybe watch movies on weekends. Tyler's enthusiastic agreement came immediate and wholehearted. Marcus met Victoria's gaze over his son's head. She was offering more than proximity. She was offering connection, maybe even the possibility of something that looked like family. The complications were obvious. She was David's widow. Marcus was the man who'd survived, while David hadn't. Their relationship was built on trauma and shared crisis. But maybe that foundation was stronger than it appeared. Maybe surviving impossible situations together created bonds that normal circumstances couldn't forge. Lily returned, tugging on Victoria's sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we get ice cream? Victoria agreed, asked if Marcus and Tyler wanted to join them. They walked together to a nearby ice cream shop. Two injured adults and two resilient children, making conversation about favorite flavors and playground equipment. At the shop, Tyler gravitated toward Victoria, asking her about the company and computers with the intense curiosity of a 7-year-old. Lily stayed near Marcus, showing him drawings she'd made of Mr. Whiskers having adventures. The natural way the children connected with both adults spoke to something forming, something that might eventually deserve the name family. As they ate their ice cream at a picnic table outside, Lily made an observation with the blunt honesty of childhood. Mr. Kane looks at Mommy the way Daddy did in pictures, like she's important. Victoria flushed slightly, but didn't correct her daughter. Marcus felt his own face warm. Tyler jumped in helpfully. Dad looks at everybody like they're important when he's trying to protect them. That's just his protection face. The adults made eye contact, shared a moment of understanding. Whatever was developing between them would need time, would need to evolve naturally without forcing. But the possibility existed, hung in the air like promise of spring after brutal winter. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Ramirez. His former teammate had recovered from his injury, was walking with a cane now. The message was characteristically brief. Team dinner Friday. Bring the kid, bring Victoria and Lily too if you want. We're all family now. Marcus showed the message to Victoria. She smiled. I'd like that. The afternoon wound down. Tyler and Lily made plans to see each other again soon, exchanged solemn promises to stay in touch. Victoria and Marcus agreed to coordinate schedules, to build regular contact that would benefit the children. As they prepared to part ways in the parking lot, Lily handed Mr. Whiskers to Tyler. He can visit you until next time. Tyler accepted the one-eyed rabbit with appropriate reverence, understanding the trust being placed in him.